Welcome to the latest edition of the Buyer's Guide. In this video we are going to be taking a look at a brand new Dynamite Baits Groundbait mix. It's one that I've already been out using it and testing it, and I've also filmed some videos using this mix, but I'm going to be mixing it up right here in the tackle room so you can see what the mix is like, and we're also going to be seeing how it reacts underwater. Well, the mix that we've got for this edition is the Dynamite Baits Silverfish, but it's the actual Betaine green mix that we're actually taking a look at. Now, it's a mix that I've already been out on the bank and fished with, and I will put a link to that video at the end of this video for you so you can see how we went on when we actually fished with it. Now, it's very much an autumn stroke winter type mix. As the name suggests, it is a silverfish mix, and as the name suggests, it's got the Betaine green on there as well. Now, initially we'll take a quick look at the packaging because that can tell us a lot about a mix. So obviously it's got the very distinctive Dynamite Baits logo on there. It is from the Stim range, and these are the silverfish ground baits. It's got the Betaine green clearly marked on there, so it's obviously very distinctive in the tackle shop if you're going to go out and look for this mix. It's got a nice big window on there, so that gives us a great idea of what the mix is like. As you can see, it's that lovely Betaine, that dark green colour that will no doubt go darker when we start mixing it, and it's very, very fine, and that's why it's ideal for this time of year. It's also got the fine feed pellet mix on there, so it's telling you that it's got the pellets in there, so it is obviously a fish meal mix as you'd expect. But as you can see, it's a really nice fine mix, and if you're into your green mixers, then this might be right up your street. If we flip the bag over, we've got some tiny small text on there. Some of that's actually rubbed off now because I've had this bag for a while. These aren't 1 kilo bags. Lots of ground baits of this size, you tend to think that they're 1 kilo, but they're not. This one is actually 900 grams. So you probably just need to bear that in mind when you're looking at how cost effective they are to buy. We do have a BB date on there. I don't know if that's best before, I'm assuming it is, but that date is 12/2023. And at the time of filming, it's just on the last day of November 20, so it's got a long shelf life on it, which is great. And then the rest of the bag is just it's just obviously got some of the photos on there just showing you the different applications for this mix. So it's obviously suited for bowling in, fishing with a feeder, and just general silverfish fishing. Now, I'm going to mix this up in the bowl. We're going to get an idea of will it overwet, it'll give us an idea of how much feed content is in it as well, because once it's mixed, I'm going to put it through a fine sieve as well, and then we're going to see how it performs underwater. So the first thing we need to do is get it mixed up. Okay, so as soon as I open this is going to give us an idea of what the smell's like. Like I say, it is a fish meal mix. It's got the pellets in there, so it will be suited to lots of the wow, that's really sweet, really sweet. You know, I mean, I have fished with this mix before, but that smell even caught me out then. It's just amazing how sweet it is. So if you're into your sweet fish meal mixers, then this might be the one that you'd like to try. As you can see, it's that lovely green colour. It's almost camouflaged against the ground bait mixing bowl that I'm using, but that is so sweet, and I dare say that's going to get even stronger when we start mixing it. But as you can see, it's really fine. Really fine, and that's why I've been using it over the last few weeks on you know, 1 or 2 different venues. So let's get it mixed up. We'll see how darker it goes. No doubt it will go darker. Yeah, that's really kicked up the smell. Now it's gone even sweeter. Really sweet. It catches me by surprise every time with how sweet it is. You know, one thing we found about sweet mixers is that, you know, quite often on the hard days, especially in winter, sweeter mixers can catch you fish of all stamps and all sizes. Whereas you know, on some of the venues that I've fished over the last 3 winters, the stronger fish meal mixers, the ones that aren't sweet, tend to be a little bit more selective for bigger fish. So if you're going somewhere where you want lots of bites, you know, from fish of all different sizes, then the sweet route is the way that we've really gone for the last probably 3 years now. So, you know, this might interest you if that's the sort of fishing that you're into. As you can see, some of it's coming off on my hand. Alright, so it is quite, can I use the word oily? I'll say it feels a little bit oily. It's going to need some more water, that's still dry. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to mix this in a medium consistency so that we get a good reading of how it's going to perform when we put it in the tank, it'll give us a more realistic impression of how it would normally react on a normal consistency. But I will try it on a couple of different consistencies just so you can see what it's like. As you can see, it's got some of it coming off on my hand now, but as you can also see, it's not sticky. Alright, so you know, obviously I've added extra water to that, so it's not really oily now. It's not oily and it's not sticky. You know, sometimes you get that oil that sticks to your fingers that you almost need to peel off and scrape off. Well, as you can see, there isn't any of that there. Alright, so I'm not going to add any more water to that. You can see it's gone quite a bit darker. If I just compare that to some of the dry mix next to it, in fact it hasn't changed much at all actually. It's gone a little bit darker, but you can see the difference there. There's very little difference between it wet and dry. But that's it. I mean, that's really sweet. It doesn't look like there's much feed in there at all. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to give this, just like with every ground bait in this series, I'm going to give it exactly 20 minutes to rest. I'm going to come back to it. If it needs a little bit more water adding to it, I will add that. I'm then going to put it through a 3mm sieve to give you an idea of what the feed content is like. So we'll get an idea if there is much feed in there, and if there is, it'll give us an idea of what size that feed is. And then I'm going to put it in a cage feeder and we'll see how it performs in the tank. Well, that's been exactly 20 minutes. It's had a decent time to rest now. Now normally I would give it longer than that. A lot of the sessions that I'm fishing now, I'm mixing the ground bait the night before, really just to make sure it's much more inert. That obviously applies more when I'm targeting skimmers, bream, and if you are targeting carp with ground bait as well, that's when the inert mixers come into play. However, if I was fishing for roach and fish that are up in the water, more active ways of fishing like we do on natural venues, then I have been mixing the ground bait on the morning just so it's a little bit more active. But I would normally give it longer than this, so either I would have mixed this the night before, or I would have mixed it as soon as I got to my peg. So really, you know, you're giving the mix at least an hour to rest. So 20 minutes is not the length of time I would normally do in a match, but that's the length of time I've given every single mix in this series. So that's how long it's had, and as you can see, that's it still stayed quite dark. It's really, the sweetness coming off it's unbelievable. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pop it through I've got a 3mm sieve, and we're going to put the mix through that. I'll pop that on there, and this is going to give us an idea of what the feed content is like. Okay, pop that there out of the way, and I'll just push that through. Well, not push it through, but I'll riddle it through. So there we go. So you can see what's left there, and that doesn't look like there's any feed there whatsoever. That is just bits of the ground bait that's absorbed more water than the rest. All right, so that's not feed. So that should push through really nice and easy. There we go, and everything's gone through, as you can see. Little bit of oil now. Now I've physically pushed that through the mix, so there is a little bit of oil there, as you can see. What's on my hands, that's the oil that I was talking about initially. Okay, but feed wise, there's nothing there, or the feed that is there is less than 3mm, and that's why it's gone through that sieve, no problem. Okay, so now we're left with a nice fine mix, ideal for winter. So what I'm going to do is, I've got a large cage feeder here now. I'm going to try and overwet the mix first, just to see if it will overwet, and then I'm going to put it in the cage feeder and see how it's going to perform under the water whilst it's actually in the tank. So I'm going to add a little bit of water just here on this portion, just so we see how it overwets. And there we go, as you can see, that overwets nicely. It's not gone into a paste. Okay, so you could feed that as a slop, or you could just overwet it, just like we're doing lots of our fishing now. And what I will do is I'll put that in the tank after we've done the cage feeder test. I'll put that in the tank so that you can see how that the wet mix falls through the water. So let's get a cage feeder filled up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same feeder that I've used for every single test in this series. It's just a side weighted cage feeder, but it's one with a fine wire mesh, so that just means that the water can get to the ground bait really nice and quickly and easily. Alright, so let's fill this feeder up. Now I'm going to fill this up with a medium consistency. Okay, so I'm going to squeeze that as though I was going to cast that 50 metres. Alright, so I'm not packing it in really tightly. I've tried to keep it as uniform as possible. As you can see, that's a nice large feeder, so the water's going to get to that really nice and quickly. So let's pop it in the tank and see what it's like underwater. So let's just lower that into the tank. I'll put it in the middle of the shot for you. Turn it on its side. Move the camera there for you. And as you can see, there's virtually nothing coming off that now. It's just almost melting away. So there's nothing fizzing off it. This has only had 20 minutes to rest, don't forget. Normally I would have mixed this the night before, but as you can see, that is it's just melting away. That is absolutely brilliant. That's just what I would want if I was going to be using this mix for silverfish, certainly on the feeder, for skimmers, for bream, the bottom feeding fish. You wouldn't really want to attract loads of little roach into the peg and that sort of thing, which is what can happen with mixes that are a little bit drier with bits coming off. But as you can see, there's nothing. You can just see the surface of the water. There's nothing on there. There's nothing on the surface, and the whole mix has just melted away. Now that's been in there in less than a minute, probably 30 seconds, 45 seconds, something like that, and it's almost finished breaking down. It's broken down really, really quickly. Like I say, I didn't squeeze it in too tight. If I'd squeezed it in tighter, then it would have been a slower breakdown. But as you can see, that's just melted away. And there's nothing coming off that. There's a little bit of a haze, so that means that the dye isn't coming out of the ground bait. Sometimes you get that green or a black haze around it, like you do with black mixers, with dark mixers. But there's nothing around that. That's absolutely brilliant. I really like that. And that's just about inert now. That's just about finished. That's been in there just over a minute, and that's just about done. Fantastic. I like that. I can see why. Well, like I say, I've been actually out on the bank fishing with this, and I have caught skimmers and bream with it in very cold water. So now I've seen that perform like that, I'll certainly be using it again. But that's ideal. So what I'll do now is I'll just drop this over-wetted bit of the mix into the tank for you, just so you can see how that falls through the water. I'm sure this will be interesting, because sometimes you get mixes that kind of cloud from the top. Or you know, as soon as they enter the water, you get a nice cloud, whereas some of them just kind of fall in a clump, in almost like a paste down to the bottom. So let's just pop this in the tank. I'll just do this to one side for you. Let's pop that in there. There you go. It's the wet slop. Okay, so you haven't got a cloud. There's a bit of a cloud that's kicked up, as you can see, in mid-water, just to the right of the shot. But that's just gone in a wet ball, really. So that's ideal, like, you know, again, for skimmers, for bream, for bottom feeding fish. You know, obviously most of the time we're fishing with feeders, or I am anyway, and that's where I want the fish. I want them to be on the bottom, because that's where they are easier to catch. And with mixers like this, they are just encouraging the fish to go down and stay down on the bottom. So a fantastic mix, and I can see why it's been so popular since its release a few weeks ago. Now, as regards getting hold of this mix, there are loads and loads of Dynamite stockists up and down the country. Obviously there are always online sales as well for you to get hold of these ground baits, but price wise, it's not a 1 kilo bag, it's 900 grams, and the price that I've looked for, I've actually looked at them today just on the internet, and they range from about £4.15 to about $4.25, something like that. So it's still, you know, it's not by any means an expensive ground bait. And like I said, when you're using mixers like this at this time of year, one of the best things I can say to you is just measure your ground bait out. You know, a bag like that, you could quite easily get 3 sessions out of it. So when you look at, you know, the cost of a bag in comparison to how much you're actually using at this time of year, you know, this time of year we're cutting back on the feed, so we're not using as much. So if you're into your sweet fish meal mixers, certainly ones going through autumn and winter where you want to cut down on the feed, the amount of feed that's in there, fishing is getting harder now, then this might be the mix for you. But it's a really, really sweet smelling mix, you know, and I've really got into the sweet mixers over the last three winters. So yeah, it's a really nice mix, and I've been enjoying using it. Now, if you want to watch the video where I actually went out and fished with this mix, I had a great day's fishing with it. If you want to see that, the link is at the end of this video for you. So I hope you've enjoyed this bit of an insight into yet another new mix. This is a mix that is quite easy to get hold of now. Some of the mixes I've featured in this series aren't quite as easy to get hold of, and as always, it depends where you are in the country or even within Europe, because some of the mixes have been a little bit more European based as opposed to UK based. So hope you've enjoyed this insight into yet another mix. If you have, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit subscribe. And if you want to see that video where I went out and fished with this mix, the link is just there for you. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video on Thursday.